Hi, this is video number 391. Had a pretty good weekend here. Not too much happened. Eli was over for a sleepover. Weather was brutal again, cold all weekend, windy. It's calm today, it's cloudy. There is like some sort of mixed precipitation coming down. Roads are getting icy, I know that. It's only like 20 degrees, but you know, like we're in freezing rain too, and some snow and some sleet and different stuff coming down. So it is supposed to get warmer after today. That's the good news. But right now I think the roads are probably going to glaze over and it's going to get really nasty. Did my workout already this morning. Well, it's not already. It's like it's after 1 o'clock now. Did my workout, did a lot of extra reps because I don't work out on Sunday, so usually Monday I do a little extra because I got extra energy. Okay, I did my W-2s this morning for the church. You go online, you go to, it's a Social Security Administration, actually, is where you file W-2s. I always thought it was the IRS, but it's actually the Social Security Administration, and I guess they give the W-2s, the information to the IRS. So I filed it online. That always makes me a little nervous because you have to get it on there right. If you submit it and it's wrong, you can't go back and correct it. They don't let you. So you have to kind of go over that over and over and over to make absolutely sure that you got it right. And they do they'll give you temporary W-2s and W-3 where you can make sure you got it right before you actually officially submit it. So I got that done this morning. That's a load off my mind. I still have to do the reconciliation with the state and the local government, and got to get the forms to the employees, but that's over with for another year. Okay, Eli did have a sleepover Saturday night. He got here about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He had been with my son and his girlfriend took them to a place called Monkey Joe's, kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese. They had a good time, but he was pretty worn out when he got here already, which that was okay with me, but we watched like some videos and that and had some dinner, and he was ready for bed pretty quick. He was at the doctor's this morning. He's had this cough for a long time, like this congested cough, and his head's all stuffed up. I guess he has a sinus infection. He went early this morning to the doctor. I think they gave him an antibiotic, but he did go to school, and they're getting out like early. Got out like before 12 o'clock, so he was only in school for a short time this morning. So hopefully he'll be feeling better. He wasn't feeling all that bad over the weekend. But I could tell he looked tired. He looked pretty tired compared to what he usually is. So hopefully he's feeling pretty good now. Okay, the game tonight, the NCAA football championship game is on tonight. Georgia and Alabama. Go Dogs, go Bulldogs. I don't have a great appreciation for Alabama. I don't know. They're good all the time. I'd like to see somebody else get in there, but should be a good game. I'll have to watch that tonight later on. I got a number of emails here. I think I have 3 emails, which I think I responded to all of them. One is a general sort of email that has to do with something, a subject that I get questions on every now and then. So it's kind of like, it's sort of a response. It's a general response. It's a specific kind of general response. So I'll go over that. And then earlier this morning I got few Facebook messages from someone, so see what we got here. I don't know how long this might not be as long as usual. I don't know. So the first one here, the first email says, "Hi, when you say kindling is caused by a more frequent dosing of benzos, how frequent do you mean? For instance, since I have stopped taking it every day 16 months ago, I have taken it 11 times in the past 16 months. A couple times for bad panic attacks, and other times mostly to go to doctor's appointments to just check stuff going on. Another question, I was on Xanax and different antidepressants. Can they cause peripheral nerve issues? I know I have read about burning, numbing, tingling, but can it cause loss of temperature sensation and numbing? Right now it is one-sided on the right side. It also gets like a hot sensation. My hand does get cold too. I did go to the ER. They did blood tests, EKG, and some other stuff, like push my hands, touch your nose, etc. I did have a brain CT scan a month ago before this happened, so he didn't want to do another one. He referred me to a neurologist. It's like anytime I get a little hope of getting better, it gets worse and something else gets added on. Yeah, I know. I get that a lot from people who they seem to be improving some, they're noticing some improvement, and then something else happens and then it freaks you out. I know that. So I did write back to her. Okay. Hi, kindling is when we come off a benzo for a while and then go back on it later. That makes coming off each successive time more difficult. You are taking what we call rescue doses. It is best to stay away from rescue doses if you can. It does not set you back, but it can prolong the process. The burning, numbness, tingling, cold sensations, and so on are all extremely common in benzo withdrawal. They are a result of the temporary damage the drugs have done to us. We all manifest that damage in different ways with different symptoms. It is very common for new symptoms to show up anywhere in the healing process. It does not mean you are getting worse. It is just the way your body is healing. I know it is scary, but it's very common. Yeah, rescue doses, it's not a good idea. I know though a lot of people do it. Like you get into a state where you're just so bad off, you feel so, especially the mental stuff, you get anxiety, you get like sometimes akathisia, and you take a rescue dose. The panic attacks, you just feel like you're gonna die and you want some relief, any relief. I get that from so many people. I just want some relief. And I remember when I was getting nowhere, it seemed like when I was sick for many, many months with no noticeable improvement, it's like, could I just get a little bit of relief? And I think when I did actually feel the relief, it felt enormous. It was just a little bit, but it felt enormous because I hadn't felt anything good for so very, very long. It felt really, really good. Off 16 months, that's a good amount of healing time. 11 rescue doses. Okay, the kindling, you hear about it commonly with drinking. I've talked about this before. Like alcoholics kindle themselves quite a bit usually because they'll quit for a while, then they go back on, and then it's harder to come off it's harder to stop drinking the next time. And it's the same with benzos. It does something to your nervous system, your receptors probably, and then it's harder to, you get more symptoms. You get more symptoms, so your body's kind of like wanting relief in a bigger way because the symptoms now are more intense, or you might have more symptoms. Get peripheral nerve issues. Generally speaking, benzos, they mess up your nervous system in general, like your central nervous system, your autonomic nervous system, like the sympathetic, parasympathetic, like your whole nervous system, like it's all connected. So, yeah, and having all the tests done and stuff, like most everybody has that done. The numbness is very common, burning, tingling, twitching, all kinds of weird physical sensations. The hot cold thing, pretty common too. And the weird thing is a lot of these symptoms, you might get them in certain places at one point, and maybe the next day they've gone from there and they've moved somewhere else in the body. It's just really, really strange. And it's funny how doctors will always refer you to a neurologist, and the neurologist doesn't know either. Nobody knows exactly what's going on. That's what's so strange about this. But there are people working on it. There are people that are excited about, getting into this and pulling back the layers and seeing exactly what's going on. I'm glad for that. Yeah, okay. Let me see. Next email. How can we know for sure we aren't brain damaged or have neurotoxicity or degenerative brain disease? I'm 11 months off and worse than ever. I was better off early on in withdrawal. Also, have you ever heard of the symptom of not feeling right in the body, like nowhere? If I walk into a room, I feel so off and have to hurry back to bed. I won't be able to live like this. It's too hard. Yeah. Okay, my response, it is not unusual to feel worse at times as the healing process continues. I get this same question often. One would logically think that we would feel better and better as time progresses, but that is not the case for many going through withdrawal. We are continually healing as time passes, but that does not always translate into feeling better as time passes. The feeling off and feeling like we are nowhere are common sensations. They're probably a combination of depersonalization, derealization, and fear. I constantly felt like I was disconnected from everything and not really part of what was around me. Like I didn't exist almost, or at least not exist in the place I seemed to be. It was very disturbing and scary. You won't have to live like this forever. It really does end, even though it seems like that is an impossibility right now. I remember it very well. These bizarre feelings and sensations will eventually fade, and they will. All of this stuff does fade, but it seems like it takes forever. The feeling off sensation, whenever I think of my own derealization and the feeling disconnected and even beyond disconnected, I think of the day, the Friday I was discharged from Pennsylvania Psychiatric Institute. A few hours earlier, I had my 4th and final ECT treatment. And I remember coming out of that building with my wife. She was walking beside me. We were walking toward the car, and it was just starting to snow, and there was a little bit of snow on the ground, enough to cover it. And we were walking along this brick kind of like sidewalk. I just was in a state that I have never been in. Well, the next couple of days I was in the same state, but it was so incredibly surreal. It was like I knew I existed because I could feel pain and anguish and just agony, but it's like I didn't know where I existed. I didn't know I could see around me. It just was incredibly bizarre. It was just so incredibly surreal. I remember looking at I looked behind me, and there were 2 sets of foot tracks, and I thought, well, I must be here wherever this is because there were 2 sets of tracks there. And I can remember, I knew we were going to my car, and I really was hoping I would just fall over and die. But yet, it was just so weird. It was so weird. It was like I wasn't there, but I knew I was there, but I didn't know where there was, and I didn't know what form I was in. It was just almost like being a vapor or something floating around. It was weird. I didn't like it. And I remember I was that way that was a Friday, at least through Monday. Because Monday my brother-in-law came over and sat with me. He sat in one chair in the living room. I sat across the living room, trying to convince him that it was okay probably to commit suicide. I just kept that up all day. Poor guy. I felt bad for him, but he kept me alive. But it was like I could see us in the living room talking, like I was floating in the ceiling or somewhere, and I was observing us talk. It was just weird. And I only lasted in that state for till about Tuesday or Wednesday. I did reinstate 1 milligram of Klonopin just to, at least it kind of pulled me out of the really, really severe state I was in. I was still in very bad tolerance withdrawal, but the super acute symptoms did subside some. Nasty. One of the very worst few days of my life, really, honestly. But yeah, the disconnectedness and the derealization and just the weird, surreal kinds of feelings we have, they are disturbing. They're scary. They are scary. I had lived with like some derealization for the whole time I took Klonopin. I had derealization. I didn't know what it was. And even before that, when I drank all that time and stuff, I had those feelings too. But when I got on the Klonopin, it was much worse. And then when I came off, it was even worse. And all the years I was on Klonopin, and I would get panic attacks too because I didn't know what that was. But yeah, feeling off like that is just not fun. Okay, and as I said, I get lots of emails about different subjects. This one I get every now and then, like people who are having burning sensations in their digestive system, like it's reflux or something else. We kind of worry about that. That was one of the very first symptoms I had way back, even before I was on any kind of psych drug. When we're in withdrawal or intolerance or whatever, we kind of struggle with the idea of like, well, should I take a PPI, a proton pump inhibitor, which like makes your stomach no longer produces acid then, so that if you have reflux, you're not going to get that burning sensation from the acid in your stomach, or what should I do? Sometimes the PPI will make things worse. And the PPIs like Nexium, Prilosec, Protonix, Acefex, I think is one. And there are a few other ones too. Like what could be going on if you're taking a PPI and it's not working, you still have like burning issues, and in fact it seems to be making things worse. And I have gotten some emails from people, and I got one recently, and here was my response. They were asking me kind of like, what do you think's going on? What do you think maybe I should do? And I wrote this: I always try to use my own experience in answering questions I get. Okay, and I always do. I try to like relate it back to my own experience, because I know that for sure that happened to me. Before I was ever put on psych drugs, I can recall getting a burning sensation in my mouth and throat and on my lips. Of course, I thought it was some sort of stomach acid problem, so I took some over-the-counter drug like Pepcid or something like that. That didn't help at all. I did notice that it would go away when I drank alcohol, which I did a lot back in the day. It was not really that nasty, severe heartburn we get sometimes in the chest. Okay. As time went on, disturbing things happened in my life and that created mounting, extreme anxiety in me. I started having panic attacks and ended up at the doctor's. He told me my problem was anxiety and prescribed me Xanax and gave me free samples of Paxil. Of course, that started me then into the world of polydrugging with its extreme anxiety, panic attacks, and depression. It was not long after the initial drugging that I did develop severe heartburn from the extreme reflux caused by the anxiety. I was put on a PPI, which completely got rid of the heartburn within hours. I stayed on the PPI for 15 years while I was on Klonopin and during my withdrawal from Klonopin. It was not until I was well from the withdrawal that I was able to get off the PPI. I still have a little reflux, probably because I have a moderate hiatal hernia, but I take famotidine for that. I don't need the PPI. Famotidine is a little bit different. It does something with the, I think the acid in the stomach, but it doesn't prevent it from being synthesized or secreted. It does something else. So for me, there were two different things going on. The initial burning was apparently simply anxiety caused by all the things going on in my life. That's why it did not respond to any sort of antacid. The extreme heartburn that I experienced later was from the elevated anxiety panic caused by the drugs, benzos as well as antidepressants. It remained until I was well from the withdrawal from the benzo, Klonopin. Of course, the definitive way to determine whether or not burning sensations in the esophagus are caused by acid is to have an endoscopic procedure or other test to determine if acid is refluxing into the esophagus. The burning sensation could simply be from the anxiety caused by withdrawal. That would explain why a PPI sometimes makes the burning sensation worse. It could be heightening anxiety and therefore the burning sensation. The hope is for people going through this that is simply burning from anxiety and not acid reflux. At least one would not have to worry about damage to the esophagus. Okay, so in my experience, as I read here, there was an initial burning way back when things were going on in my life that it was starting to get out of control, like the stuff that was going on at work, and then my daughter became a teenager, and the combination of those two things. Then I started drinking more, which was a bad thing to do, and I was getting more and more anxiety. And I would notice, I can remember, especially in the afternoon, sitting before I would drink, I would have this burning in my throat and my mouth and on my lips too sometimes. And it would freak me out. And I remember taking different kinds of antacids that didn't touch it, which just made me freak out more because I had no idea what it was. But I do remember if I would drink a good bit, it would just go away. It would go away, but then later it would come back like the next day or whatever. So that was anxiety. That was just anxiety. But as time went on, things got more out of control. I ended up getting like panic attacks and that. And I got polydrugged, went to the doctor, psychiatrist, polydrugged. And then the drugs I think they gave me made things a whole lot worse. The anxiety, depression, panic attacks. And then I started getting like really severe reflux. Like the anxiety, I think, from those just made, it was so great that I still had the burning sensation in my mouth and stuff from anxiety, but it was so bad that it did actually cause a physical reflux. And I had tremendous heartburn. I remember that. That was horrible. And I talked about the 24 or 48 hour test where, you know, they stick an electrode down your nose and it dangles in your throat, and then like whenever you have heartburn, you push the button on it, and then they read it later. It keeps a record, and they said, yeah, you have pretty severe reflux. So that's how I ended up on a PPI. A lot of people, though, apparently when they're going through withdrawal or something, maybe tolerance, and they have this burning sensation, they think maybe it's actually heartburn from reflux, when in fact the anxiety itself can cause something that feels, it's like a burny feeling. And I think for some people that's, and then you take the PPI, and PPIs can actually give you like nausea and produce gas and bloating and give you digestive issues just by itself. So it's hard to sort that out. And the best way, like to determine if you've got acid reflux, is to have some sort of an endoscopic procedure done, or the pH thing, like with the electrode in your throat. I've had the endoscopic procedure too. That's a lot less unpleasant than the thing dangling in your throat. That's for sure. That was nasty. Okay. Next is, okay, here's some Facebook messages I got earlier. I won't read the entire message because, you know, some of it's not going to be helpful to anyone. But I have some of it I would like to read and talk about a little bit. Okay, she writes, I listened to a video last night, I think it was Wednesday's, and I'm guessing I have one of those personalities that is just not handling this well. I don't know. My overactive imagination just kills me. My brain is constantly freaking out. Okay. In one of my last videos, I talked about different people, different personalities, and so forth handle this differently. I use the phrase suffering well, how well we suffer. Some people suffer well and some don't. And I think that's what she's getting at here. I don't know if it's a part of it, I think, is spiritual too. But the people who really suffer unwell or not good at it, I find as I've been, you know, around a lot of people in withdrawal, are the ones that, like, they have the bitterness and the resentment, and they won't let go of it. It's not doing them any favors. It's simply not doing them any favors. That's the thing. And they don't suffer well. They don't. I think it keeps you in a state of something. Anxiety, whatever. I don't know. It's not the same as, like, some people they're more vocal just about how bad they feel. They whine and go on, and they're very vocal and they're out there. And some people, they feel the same, but they just don't talk about it. They're quiet. I was very quiet. But I didn't have the bitterness and the resentment. And that's primarily what I'm talking about when people who don't suffer well. Because I have noticed a lot of people who hang on to the bitterness and resentment. It takes them, you know, generally longer. And bitterness and resentment can actually keep you in. They can actually make you sick. You know, and that's probably how a lot of people got on benzos to begin with. Like, things going on in their life, they're bitter, resentful, and it's very stressful, I think, on people, and it kind of drags you into something that a place you don't want to be. I know a lot of alcoholics, like resentment. That's in AA meetings. That's a biggie. They have meetings, like hour-long meetings, sometimes just about resentment, because they know it will destroy you. It just will. So that's kind of when I was talking about, like, not suffering well. That's the biggie there. But some personalities are like quiet personalities that don't say much. Some people suffer like quietly, and some people are more out there. It doesn't make one right or wrong, but, you know, the not suffering well, basically resentment, bitterness, because that's not doing you any favors when you're like that. Let me see. Okay, she writes again. I wonder if you know how you can recover if the HPA axis is so messed up. I'm worried I've developed CFS or some other autoimmune disorder. Every hormone system must be so out of whack, and maybe it's getting more damaged from the continued stress of this with not coming up for air, like not coming up for air. Okay, the HPA axis. You read a lot about this. That has to do with like the endocrine system and that. And it's the hypothalamus, which is in your brain, the pituitary, which is the base of the brain, and the adrenal gland. This is interesting. The adrenal glands are a big part of this. Like adrenaline, epinephrine, that's the same thing. They are actually on top of the kidneys. And interestingly, in traditional Chinese medicine, the adrenals are actually considered part of the kidney. They're in the kidneys. I mean, I don't know if if it's a necessary distinction or not. I don't know, but those are the three of the glands. The HPA axis, they are part of the HPA axis. A lot of stuff going on. I don't know. See, that's the thing. Nobody knows exactly what has happened. We know there's downregulation of GABA receptors from benzo withdrawal, from benzos. But then is it like a domino cascading effect where that causes the brain to do something that it thinks is right? It goes into the fight or flight thing maybe, which then causes all of this other calamity almost. Like it's almost all of this other trouble that if you could correct the initial thing, like the fight or flight thing, get the brain to like take it back, like reverse it, would all of these other things just clear up on their own? With the brain, is the brain smart enough to know that, like, yes, I figured that thing out, I took this back, I reversed it, and now everything just falls back into place? I don't know. I think a lot of times what we do is we take a look at various symptoms and so forth, and we try to fix that part of the damage, when in fact that's going to continue until you backtrack and take care of the very first primary cause. Like there's a primary cause, and then like there's cascading things like secondary, tertiary causes of things that cause symptoms. It might not make sense to a lot of you since you're in withdrawal, but it makes a lot of sense to me. And I think the answer is in there somewhere, but I know I'm probably one of few that actually think that. But there are people going to look into this, excited about like looking into it. And I'm sure somebody's going to come up with something here. But yeah, the whole HPA thing, the axis, it's just, I think it's a result. I mean, it's a cause of certain kinds of symptoms, but then something has caused it to do that, to cause those symptoms. So, okay, to go on with her message here, what's wrong with me? It's like, well, you're in. She talks about reading someone, they're 12 weeks off and they're improving, and she's like, what's wrong with me? I'm off like a whole lot longer than that. And it's not that anything's wrong with anyone. That's not it. It's just some people get through this faster. They just do. And some, to me, they're fortunate. They're blessed that they have a body. They have, like genetics that, or whatever it is, that allows them to start to feel better fairly quickly compared to other people. But when you're going through this for such a long time, you think, well, there must be something wrong with me. I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not doing the right things. When in fact, all that it is, at least at this point in the game, is waiting, just waiting and not taking anything that's going to downregulate GABA receptors any further, and trying to stay away from stress, extreme stress, and so forth. But it becomes a waiting game until further notice, until somebody actually has this figured out. In my last video, like, there was someone who, they wrote something that sounded like they were certain they had it all figured out because they healed in a rather quick way, and I just can't buy it. There were too many inconsistencies in what I read there. I don't know, but some people, they get through it quickly. I don't know. Okay, and then she wrote to me again later. Hi, Dawn. Sorry, I have some more questions. Imagine that. It's about the gut. Okay, someone told me I need to heal my gut as I get revved up whenever I eat. This is probably worse than it's ever been. They said that because my gut needs healing, it can cause mental issues. I just cannot do supplements. I've tried probiotics and they make me worse. Okay, yeah, the gut thing comes up a good bit. And as I understand it, there are more GABA neuroreceptors in the gut than there are in the brain. A lot more, apparently. But obviously, the gut communicates with the brain. So, when there are issues in the gut, the brain's going to communicate with the brain, and there's probably going to be thoughts and strange feelings and so forth. When I would eat in withdrawal, It didn't matter what I ate. Like 20 minutes later, I would start getting all antsy and weird and anxious. And I think it was just a matter of like, it somehow stimulated my gut, the nervous system that, the nervous system, the neuroreceptors in my nervous system, and that went back to the brain, and then, then you got this thing going on. Okay, healing your gut. This is interesting. I hear a lot about healing the gut. Okay, but if you say, well, the symptoms in the gut are a result of withdrawal. The first cause, okay, was the first cause, like I was just talking about. And then it cascades into these, and you get gut symptoms, okay? And say, like, your gut needs healing, which I'm not exactly certain what that means. But if you don't heal the first cause or reverse the first cause or take care of it, that's going to continue to happen no matter how much you think you're healing your gut. As long as the first cause is there, if you've healed it some, it's always going to get sick again because the first cause is still there. You have not taken care of that. It's like it's like your roof is leaking water and like it rains and your carpet's ruined. Okay, and so it stops raining. You take care of your carpet. You get new carpet. Everything's nice and great and wonderful and dry. And then it rains again, and then you got to change the carpet again. There are moments where your carpet is fine and good and dry. But, if you don't get rid of that first cause, the hole in the ceiling, and the roof, your carpet's going to keep getting bad. It's keep getting wet. So it's kind of like that. Like the thing it's like that song, there's a hole in my bucket, there lies. It's like that, where like different things keep going wrong. And until you fix the hole in the bucket, you're out of luck, And I think that's what, in my mind, maybe it's because I went through this. There was a first cause. Because this happens so very rapidly with benzos, especially. In a matter of weeks, like something happened, like the first cause happened, and now you got all this garbage going on. Like it seems to go on forever, and it's not just a few little things. It's your entire body. Everything about your body is just out of whack. So I'm big on the first cause thing. And I don't know that people are going to be looking into this and studying it. I don't know. Maybe it's just because I was in it and it just felt that way, like something profound happened at the beginning and threw everything out of whack. And until that is reversed or cured or made better in some fashion, you're putting like band-aids on things. To me, that's kind of how I look at it. But I could be wrong. I mean, I've been wrong a few times in my life. Like, just ask my wife. She'll say, well, you're wrong most of the time. But well, that's not exactly true, but a good percentage of the time. So anyway, that's what I got here. Yeah, the first cause, I think, if I had to boil my whole perception of this whole process down as what has happened to us, it's the first cause. We need to identify, identifying the first cause is the benzo. It's like, or maybe the antidepressant or whatever, but what has it done? What has it made happen? Has it actually made the brain do something to itself that the brain thought was good, and in fact it was not good. It was tricked into doing this thing, and now it doesn't know how to undo this thing because it thinks it's right. I don't know. And interestingly too, she wrote something about, and I had mentioned this in one of the last videos about like being allergic to her, and that was, I had said something about, like, somebody said this is like we are allergic to ourselves. And that was from someone from Pennsylvania who actually did identify herself to me the other night. That's a good way of putting it. It's like part of our brain is making the other part sick. It's making us sick, but it doesn't understand that it's making itself sick too. It's very strange. It's like being allergic to ourselves. That's a pretty good analogy. I like that. But anyway, I'm sure there is an answer. I'm sure there is. I am hoping that, when people start looking into this further and they're motivated, and you get outside the box and start looking around and thinking in many different kinds of ways, that somebody's going to find something. Somebody's going to they're going to have that aha moment, like eureka, I think this is what it is. And hopefully be something that's testable, something that you could maybe try something and see if it will test your hypothesis that you make, and have some pay dirt there for once. It's been a while since something good has happened in all of this, but the day is coming, I'm sure of it, and we'll see. We'll just have to see. So anyway, I'm at almost 35 minutes now. I dragged that up pretty quick or pretty long. Still snowing here a little bit, probably very icy roads. I'm kind of exhausted from doing the W2s this morning. That always does kind of like, doesn't freak me out, but I'm very, very careful. I just have to really concentrate to make sure that everything is exactly right. Now you do the W2s for the employees, and then there's a W3. It's called a W3 for the employer, where it adds it all up for all the employees, and that's one good check of it. Like if your W3 matches, if the W3 that I calculate matches the W3 that the software from the Social Security Administration calculates, then I'm pretty sure I got it right. But you got to make sure everything's in the right blocks, or it's all messed up, and then you got to try to go back later with correction forms and make it better, and that's a hassle. So anyway, that's what I have here. Gonna be watching the football game tonight, and go Dogs, go Georgia. I'm not typically a Georgia fan, but I personally think Penn State should be playing, but you know, that's another story. Anyway, take care. You're getting better. You are getting well. I know, especially lately, some people I've known for quite some time going through this, they're just at their wits' end. And I'm getting lots of like desperate messages and emails, like, and I know this is hard. I wish I had more than words. I really, really do. But I know some people are looking into this. They're excited about it. And that's the biggest part of the battle, I think. I think there is an answer. But up to this point, it's been a matter of getting people motivated, excited to like, okay, there are people out here suffering really, really badly. We need to see what we can do. We need to find something. And I think that day's coming. But until then, I know it's a hard thing, and it's a one day at a time. And I know that's really difficult when there's been many, many days in a row that you felt really poorly. But just hang in there. You're healing. You're going to get there. Time does heal. The brain will figure it out. But hopefully, you know, we're going to find something to end withdrawal here more quickly. So anyway, as always, I'm right here, and I will be right here. Bye-bye.